Thanks everybody for joining the video presentation today of the Copian product labeled Time is Now to Modernize Endpoint Backup Access and Management. I'm going to walk you through some information here as well as go into a product demonstration and an administrative console view. So some of the things to consider, mobile worker trends and some of the information out there, things are changing. You look at what Gartner's saying today, by 2013, 80% of the businesses will support a workforce using tablets. The iPads are making steam out there, and a lot of tablets are showing up on the market, and they're not going to overtake laptops, but they're going to be out there. According to Nummertease, 60 to 70% of all employees work in locations different from their supervisors. So as you can see, a lot of people moving along, moving about. They have a lot of mobile devices, and again, management of these devices is going to be critical. So you need to consider that mobile workers are not just laptop users any longer. They may be tablet or smartphone users. And how do you manage that data? So we say, ask the CIO, do you have a strategy to manage corporate data on endpoints? You ask yourself, is corporate data stored in multiple locations? So does a CEO have a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, and a network share? Is data being stored in all 3 or 4 of those locations? And can the end user access all the data from a tablet? If the user's got the iPad, they're able to go out and actually access data they've created somewhere. Are users using Dropbox? Great product. However, downside is data is hosted out in an environment where it's accessible to just about anyone. And can the support e-discovery requests for endpoint data? Not everything makes it to email, folks, although we think it does. If you're undergoing, some kind of legal case, you need to put a document on legal hold. Having the powers to perform e-discovery across all data is going to become critical, not just a nice to have. So you look at what most folks are using today. Most companies are using a 25-year-old technology that just really can't keep up with the changing times. We have multiple different hubs or file servers that are out there. A lot of complexity. Of course, you got to have costs involved to back these devices up. Data spread out in multiple different locations. Many a times it comes back to essential storage, so you got more traffic over the WAN. On the end user side, you have little or no control because most of the time you're asking users to create data or move it once it's created to a home directory. So a lot of users get aggravated and start using these third-party technologies like Dropbox. Again, very good, yet data is moving to the wrong direction. It should be moving this way when it's moving this way. And in this architecture, there's no way possible for me to take out my iPad today and be able to access file server data. So what Copian says is, well, you know what, there's a better way to do this. Let's create mobile-optimized private cloud. So this is all done within your own environment or through one of our third-party vendors who host the solution as a service. But the key part here is that there's no longer multiple hubs. All data from all endpoints, whether it be a laptop, desktop, iPad, other kind of tablet, is all flowing back to one central repository. From there, you have complete control. You're able to search and use risk assessment and federated search tools to search across all data. Everything becomes WAN optimized because of the deduplication. It's secured because it's encrypted. It's robust because you're able to, define different paths and directories you want backed up. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to change the user's behavior. So there's no training required, unlike most of the products that have been on the market. And again, access to data from any one of these devices that you see here is now available. It's helping you create a better environment for your users to work in. So things that you're not thinking about, let's take a 5% failure rate, for example. You implement a technology, and 5% of the folks' backup jobs fail because of human intervention. Well, do you want to get alerted every day about each one of those issues? If you have a sales team who works disconnect and doesn't connect to the backup server, do you want to know every time or every day they're not connected? Probably not. How do you go about managing that? What about security and audit? Is your CEO going to come to you and say, excuse me, John, who's accessing my data? Now that it's out there and it's accessible to the administrators. Is there some sort of audit trail that's taking place where all the recoveries and access is being done? Your mobile and remote users. VPN is typically the way to connect back to the home network when you're out of the office. Is it a bottleneck now? Is it going to become a bottleneck when you move more data? And what about the general console? Again, is the product delivering the capabilities to perform e-discovery? If not, are you really getting the best of all the products that are out there? So Copian's mobile optimized private cloud here, just to kind of recap. So access anywhere, wonderful feature. Auto backup self-service recovery. Users can actually use full text search built right within the product to recover. We're going to have sharing and auto-syncing between devices so that if you make changes on your iPad, changes will take place on your laptop. Risk management and remote wipe in the event that a machine is lost. Again, the federated search is there. And the key part here is that it's a unified view. Every document by every user in the company is now under one roof. Think of the possibilities. So anyways, our key differentiators as you kind of scour the market for the available solutions, you'll notice that Copian has at the least 5 key differentiators, okay? And we like to go a little bit deeper into each one of these, but for the most part, object-based deduplication is really where the core of the product was designed. We're able to find common data across unrelated files and unrelated users. We've created a zero admin, so if you do have a 5% human intervention failure rate, you could create thresholds so that you only get alerted when a user exceeds that threshold. It's a completely native end-user experience, so we've built the product into the OS on both the Windows and the Mac side, so users don't have to become accustomed to a new GUI. We've built remote user capabilities so that users don't need to VPN in, but you can still have secure access without opening incoming firewall ports. We also have site optimization tools, so since all your backups come back to one location, if you're worried about recovery time objectives, you could have a copy of that user's data local to wherever location they're at. And then operational leverage. Again, not to beat a dead horse here, but e-discovery, federated search, risk assessment are features you'll see with Copian and not with many others out there today. So if I could see a show of hands, I'd probably see maybe 1 or 2 folks raise a hand and say, well, I'm not familiar 100% with deduplication. Not to worry, I'll give you kind of a brief overview here and then dive into the object-based dedupe, which is patented through Copian. So deduplication is designed to obviously find common data out there to help reduce both bandwidth and storage. Copian took it to the next level and said, well, user data is mainly comprised of Office documents, PSTs, PDFs, things of that nature. There's got to be a better way to find common data. So what we did is we broke data up into objects. And if you look at what most of the products are doing today, they're looking at the blocks. And objects, sometimes based on their size, can get broken up amongst many different blocks. But we keep them intact, fully intact, so we can see an object as its true identity. And the benefit is that if you have a user create a completely different PowerPoint presentation, depending on where the slide objects are within the slide, all the blocks may look different. And most products would say, well, I have no common data. Back it up again, store it again. With Copian, because these images have already been backed up by another user in another document, we don't have to back them up, only the new third image. So if you take a step back and you think of the company logo, how many millions of times would that show up in a Microsoft Word document? Unbelievable. Copian backs it up once and never has to back it up again for any user in any document. Here's some justification statistics here just to show you that about a couple hundred users moved 723 gigs of original data, but we reduced it to 55 before it's transmitted and, of course, while it's being stored. Heavy PST users, they decided to include PSTs in their backup set. Rather than having to move 49 gigs of data on a daily basis, Copian reduced it to under a gig. It's over a 66x reduction in what data movement and storage is required. Phenomenal. So backing up remote users is typically the tough one, right? Copian can offer a LAN user backup, secure VPN backup. It's those pesky internet users who go home using OAuth email, using maybe Salesforce as your CRM, and never really connecting back to the corporate network. So throughout the weekend, all the work they're doing is vulnerable because if a laptop crashes or gets lost, data on the drive is gone. So Copian says, well, let's create a way to allow VPN-less access, but let's do it without putting data at risk. Let's not punch a hole in the firewall. Let's not open up an incoming port. And let's keep the server behind the firewall. So this data center represents your data center and where the main repository of data would be. Again, no incoming connections. You're going to install a separate piece of software on existing hardware that you have out in the DMZ on a publicly addressed machine. What happens is you'll identify users who would use this constant access gateway, and when a backup job kicked off, if it didn't recognize a backup to the backup server or a path, it would default going to the constant access gateway. No data would be sent until the server behind the firewall authenticated the user based on their Active Directory credentials. And that brings up a good point. This product is fully built and compatible with Active Directory and organizational units within AD. Once it establishes or recognizes that user is a valid user, it would create a secure channel from behind the firewall out to the user. So that's the patent, folks. Patent pending is that the fact that all connections are made from the inside out. The endpoint benefits. So this is where I'm going to take you away, show you a backup and a recovery. But before we go into that, I want to tell you that there's no end-user configuration required. So you can roll this out using group policy or any kind of third-party utility. Nothing the end-user needs to do. We only back up on the machines not being used, and I'll show you how that strategy works. And we have auto-resume features so that we can pick up where we left off. So what I will do is I will come here, and I will actually go into my virtual demo folder. And I will right-click. Let me just make sure I have my create a new file, and I will call it, let's just call it Webinar Wednesday, because it rhymes. And inside Webinar Wednesday, we will put some information here. Looking at backup for laptops. And we'll save it. So what Copian said is, when the user's using the machine, really a backup job shouldn't be running, because it's only going to bother the user and pull back and be a wait on their machine. So what we do is we say every time the keyboard and mouse are not being used for 30 seconds, that's when Copian will kick in and say, has there anything been created? Has anything been changed? And if so, it will back it up. Now again, this happens whether you're connected or disconnected if the user's using the constant access gateway. There's also a local cache on this machine that gets created when the MSI is installed, and it's 1 gig in size by default, which is customizable as well. Data gets cached locally, then replicated to the backup server, so that data is stored local to the machine. In the event that you don't have an internet connection, data will still be backed up and stored locally. And as you can see, just in the short time we were talking, Copian kicked in and completed a backup of the Webinar Wednesday document that we created. So we'll do the worst case scenario. We'll do a shift delete on Webinar Wednesday, and we're going to permanently delete the file. A user today would have to go out there, locate the document out in their shared drive. We keep it the same way. We create on the desktop a My Backups folder, and simply by going into My Backups and going down into your desktop and going out to Virtual Demo folder, we'll scroll down. We'll see Webinar Wednesday here. Now a user has some options. They can right-click and open it up in a temporary location, just to see if it's the right document. Okay, looking at backup for laptops. That's the document we want. You can right-click, recover to a different location, machine, computer. Or we can recover to original location. We can also do full-text search. So we could say, looking for, and as long as Windows had time to index the file, it would show up in the My Backups folder. Unfortunately here, folks, Windows has not had time to index the file, but again, if it did, which usually happens in several minutes or so, it would show up and a user could right-click here and actually recover to a different or original location. But we're going to go back to our folder where we know it is. Oops, sorry. Right-click on Webinar Wednesday, recover to original location. Job has kicked off. It's been successful, and back in our original folder is our document. It's as simple as that. That's the recovery process. Users can access multiple different backup sets simply by changing the credentials within the My Backups folder here within Properties, giving them the availability to connect to alternative backup sets in the event their machine's lost. So we appreciate your time. We hope that this was helpful and useful. We look forward for hearing from you. Check out our website, www.copian.com. Register for a free download of the software, or feel free to contact us. Appreciate it. Take care now.